Most people have the same mindset at 40 that they had at 18, just with more confidence that they're right. Scientists discovered that after a certain age, people change their opinion an average of 1.5 times per year. Not beliefs, just opinions about what to order for dinner. I'll tell you what exactly happens in the brain at that moment, and why it matters more than you think. You read books. You watch useful content. You listen to podcasts. But if your reactions, decisions, and beliefs are the same as they were 5 years ago, you're not growing. You're just collecting information without changing your thinking. Those are two fundamentally different things. Have you ever used a phone that hasn't been updated in a long time? Everything works, but slowly, glitchy, and with the wrong apps. That's what most people's thinking looks like. The hardware is fine. The software just hasn't been updated since they were 20. And the world around them is completely different now. Start with one list. Every time you catch yourself saying, "I've always thought this," or "That's obvious," write it down. That's where your blind spots live. That's where the software hasn't been updated the longest. And that's exactly where real work on your thinking begins. Think of someone you consider smart and successful. Now think of a moment when they publicly said, "I was wrong." Took a while? Probably, because people like that are rare. And they're exactly the ones who grow the fastest. Not because they're smarter, but because their software gets updated regularly. The software doesn't update itself. Never. For anyone. The only question is, are you the one who updates it intentionally? Or the one who waits for life to do it for you? Painfully and without warning. Find one person who will honestly tell you when you're thinking on autopilot. Not to criticize, just to ask, "Are you sure? Have you actually checked that?" One person like that in your life is worth more than 100 books. Charlie Munger, one of the wealthiest people in the world, deliberately kept people around him who could tell him he was wrong. He called it organized skepticism, not because he didn't trust himself, but because he knew a brain without an external mirror will always find a way to confirm what it already believes. The fastest changes in thinking don't happen in silence with a book. They happen in conversation with someone who sees you differently than you see yourself. Find that person. That's the second step. Once a month, take any old belief and try to prove it wrong. Not find balance, actually break it. If you can't, the belief is solid. If you find cracks, you just updated your software. That's what active work on your thinking looks like. This is exactly how the best scientists in the world work. Before publishing any theory, they first try to disprove it themselves. It's called falsification, not because they don't believe in their work, but because they know an idea that can't be broken from the inside will withstand everything from the outside. You don't need to change everything you think. Just once a month, take one belief, and honestly, try to find a crack in it. That's not weakness. That's the only way to know what you're actually standing on. Read biographies of people who radically changed their thinking in adulthood. Not for inspiration, to see the mechanism from the inside. Exactly how a person reached the point where their old worldview collapsed, and what they did next. That's the best manual for updating your software that exists. Elon Musk has said in interviews that he regularly reads biographies of people who were radically wrong, and then turned out to be right. Not successful people. Specifically, those who failed first. Because those stories show the turning point. The moment where old thinking surrendered to new. You won't find a manual for updating your thinking. But you will find people who have already been through it. They wrote books, lived lives, left maps. Your job is simply to read them, not for inspiration, to see the mechanism, write by hand. When you think in your head, your brain moves along familiar paths. When you write by hand, you slow down. And in that slowdown appear thoughts that never come up on autopilot. One sheet of paper a week with one difficult question. No phone, no content. Just you and the thought you've been avoiding. Research by cognitive psychologists shows people who write their thoughts by hand formulate ideas more deeply and find unconventional solutions more often than those who only think in their head or type. Slowing down the process literally activates different parts of the brain, the ones that stay silent on autopilot. Try one thing. Take a sheet of paper. Write down a question you've been avoiding for months. And don't leave until you've written 3 honest answers. Not fast ones, honest ones. That's the 5th step. And probably the most uncomfortable one of all. There are 2 types of people. Those who think mindset is something you're born with, and those who know it's a skill. The first kind hit a ceiling and call it fate. The second kind break through the ceiling and build another floor. The difference between them isn't talent or luck, just one decision, which you can make right now. One final question. What belief have you been carrying the longest and never once tried to break? Write it in the comments. That's your first step.